Now that we know what the different layers are for both the different models that we talked about in the prior lesson, let's go ahead and explain what each layer is and what it does. And let's start with the layers on the OSI model. We'll have an overview of each layer, and in future lessons, we will go deeper into the layers that are within the scope of this course. Do you remember that mnemonic I talked about, which was please do not throw sausage pizza away? Well, let's use that to break it down. The first layer is the physical layer, and this layer literally defines the physical part of the network. We're talking about things like connectors, voltage levels, transmission distances, etc. And using these communication channels, the data is transformed in a binary format, meaning ones and zeros, and we'll talk more about that in a future lesson. The second layer is the data link layer. Here, data is formatted in a way that it can access the physical layer. Have you ever heard of a computer's MAC address, which stands for Media Access Control? Well, the MAC address is a layer 2 address used in local area networks, also known as LANs, where a source MAC address and a destination MAC address are used. Then we have the network layer, and this layer provides the connection between hosts that sometimes are in separate networks, sometimes even geographically apart. If you've ever heard of an IP address, this is where they work. This is where it's decided which path to take with the different packets that are going from one device to another in order to reach its destination. In other words, this is how a device knows how to find another device. Then we have the transport layer. This layer breaks down big files into smaller pieces to have less chances of running into transmission problems. Also in this layer, it's specified if the connection will use something called TCP or UDP, as well as a port number. TCP and UDP simply determines how the data is being transferred, and we'll talk about that later. If you don't know what those are, don't worry about it yet. Then we have the session layer, and as the name suggests, this layer is in charge of the sessions between different hosts. It establishes, manages, and then, when necessary, terminates the sessions. If you've ever played online games, or if you imagine a website with a lot of traffic, like a social network or our video library server with our example, you know that a server can have a lot of different users connected at once, and it's very important to keep track of them, their communication path, if they're active or inactive, and also if you have an architecture with redundant servers, you want to know to which specific server the user is connected, and so that's what this layer is in charge of. Next, we have the presentation layer. This layer is in charge of making sure that the information sent by one host is readable by the destination host. And in this layer, you can typically find encryption and decryption. Then we have the application layer, and this is the layer that is closest to the users. So your web browser, for example, uses the application layer. When you send an email or have a video call, that software uses the application layer as well. This layer directly receives the data or input from the users to be sent to a destination host and displays the incoming data back received from other hosts. So in our example, this is where people search for a video, play it, pause it, etc. Okay, so that's an overview of the layers on the OSI model. Now we'll discuss the layers on the TCP IP model. As shown before, the layers on this model are the link layer, the internet layer, the transport layer, and the application layer. With the link layer, this is the equivalent of the first two layers in the OSI model, so the physical and data link, covering the same aspects. Then for the internet layer, that lines up with layer 3, or the network layer of the OSI model. Then you've got the transport layer that also maps directly to transport, so that one's easy. And then remember, the application layer lines up with layer 5, 6, and 7, which are the session, presentation, and application layers of the OSI model. So now that we understand the function of each layer, we need to understand how the data is prepared to be sent from one host to another. And this process is called encapsulation. So go ahead and complete this lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.